adaptable versus hyper vigilant. One can be kind of like a nervous energy because you want to develop a really deep understanding of everything that's going on, and you want to feel solid in your knowledge of things. And that can be a really a really good feeling because it allows you to go really deep, and it makes you really curious. And curiosity, I think, can make you really adaptable because you're just open, but then it can also have kind of a shadowy side of just wanting things to be sure and concrete all the time, which really connects with that hyper vigilant idea for me. So that's definitely the first thing that came up for me. I don't know if any other one lines resonate with that.
Come on, y'all. Who else is the one? We can do hard things.
Okay, we've got some people in the chat. Let's see. Nice. Paul is also a 1 and a Virgo.
Yeah, could you say a little bit more about the Virgo energy in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one line, it can be a little bit rigid. So for me, it's really interesting to see as a 1-3, it really is kind of that combination of adaptable and hyper vigilant. It's like, for me, I feel this kind of war between wanting to question everything and like try everything out, but then also wanting everything to be sure. So for me, that just like wanting things to be kind of organized and like categorized and figure them out is very much a Virgo energy.
So how about anybody who has it in the unconscious? What has been the struggle in bringing that one line energy into your life in a more conscious way?
So this card that you picked, let me just clarify for myself. This relates to the 1, this particular card, right?
Yep. Yeah, we're gonna pull a card for every one of the numbers.
Got it. Okay, got it.
Yeah. So you're a 5-1, right? Which means that I'm curious how this occurs to you.
I think the adaptable part is interesting because I'm actually not a generator, I'm a projector. So the adaptable part is really interesting for me from what I'm learning from this book, in that I have to be very conscious of that because I will adapt to the degree that I disappear within a group. Not disappear meaning that I'm not communicating, but that I adapt so readily to the energy that I feel around me that I sometimes lose my own energy, my own self. So that's how I relate to that 1.
That makes total sense, because actually kind of another trait of the 1 line is that it's really empathetic. So it's like it really can kind of feel into everything that's around it. And that kind of gives it the power of being able to really understand things. So that makes total sense.
Yeah, I think it has its really positive. And the hypervigilant for me goes along with that too, because I feel as if my radar is out there constantly scanning the energy of the people that I'm around.
Totally.
So I'm curious. The line 1 is the base of the pyramid, so to speak, right? And it is about this way in which you are able to, if I understand this right, you're able to understand the collective through whatever is personally happening to you, which I found super fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Can you think of an example where that's happened in your life that you'd be willing to share?
Where yes. Here's an example from fairly recently. And this wasn't even in a group. This was just with one person. I was talking with a family member just through Facebook Messenger, not even on the phone, not even face to face, just through texting. And as I was communicating with her, we were talking about what's going on in the world with the virus right now. And before my conversation with her, I was feeling very calm and pretty balanced. And as we talked, I pulled in all of her very anxious energy because she was feeling extremely afraid at the time, really, really fearful. And I pulled it in and pulled it in and pulled it in, and I was not even conscious that I was doing that. And then the next thing you know, after I got off my phone conversation, my message conversation with her, I went to my family and I said, okay, we can't do this, we can't do this, we can't do this, we can't do this, because, that's it. We can't do any of these things anymore. And I was so anxious. I mean, incredibly anxious. So I think not only was I picking up what she was feeling, but I guess as a projector, one of the things that I do is amplify other people's feelings. So I was amplifying them, not for her, because I was actually pretty calm when I was talking to her, but it amplified in me. So that, and I know that it was more than just her, that was tapping into the collective experience that she was sharing with me.
Yeah, that really makes sense. And with project, because all of these profile lines, they manifest kind of differently across the different types. So it's cool to have a bunch of different types here too, because like I definitely feel different around like a 5/1 generator as opposed to a 5/1 projector. And I think having that aura, the intense aura of the projector that really goes into people and can kind of take in their energy, I would imagine that adds extra intensity to that one line.
Yeah, I think it does add quite a bit of intensity to that one line.
Yeah.
Which I didn't even know any of this until the last few days. So
now you'll start really seeing it. You're going to be like, oh, wow.
I know, I will. You're right. Yep, I will.
What about any other people who have ones? Like, do you find yourself kind of going down rabbit holes of obsessions and research and things like that? I find a lot of one lines, we just assume everyone's like that. Like, oh, that's easy to figure out. I'll just Google it. And then all of a sudden you like figure it all out really quickly. Like, it's an energy of being a pretty fast learner. I don't know. Any other people with one lines find themselves doing that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that happened to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you were talking about your personal experience kind of speaking to the collective experience? Yeah, well, in 2015, I stopped taking hormonal birth control.
Yeah, it's certainly not the case that we all do. I like to explain to my, I was doing a reading for a client who has a 3-5 profile as well. And I was like, so what are the people who, if we're trying to do something and we have to get out the manual, it's a bad day. There are actually people who download the manual before they buy a product. This was so outside my experience that when one of my friends told me this, I was like, you're an alien. But no, I think that's one of the biggest gifts for me as human design is that you get to understand how different your experience of being you is from everybody else. And you get to have this window into how other people make sense of the world. And I just find it incredibly useful. So just for the sake of time, I went ahead and grabbed the card for the 2, which I think is so freaking perfect for the line 2. If I had handpicked this card, I don't think I would have done any better than that. So thank you, gods of randomness. Any 2 lines want to speak to this?
Yeah, do we have any 2 lines? Anybody?
I think we do.
Oh yeah, Eliana's a 2.
Eliana. And yeah, Eliana, 2-4. Well, we're not gonna make you talk if you don't want to, Eliana.
Yeah, if nobody wants to share, I can share some people in my life.
Yeah, why don't you get started? She says 1 sec.
Yeah, let's see. Care codependence. Yeah, that's a really interesting thing to combine too, because it's kind of that the first thing it makes me think of is just that line between how you're involved with people, like how it's all involvement with people, care and codependence, but it's like, is it the right balance? And to me, that's really what that 2 line is about that balance between the time that you're spending with other people and the time that you're spending with yourself. And I have a lot of particularly 2-4s in my life, and they say that it's just crazy the way it shows up for them, like that they just want to be alone all the time for a while, and they'll be like, oh, this is just who I am. But then one day it'll kind of flip and they'll be like, wait, I really need to be with people. And then they're with people, and then all of a sudden they're like, wait, I really need to be alone. And so it's just like this dance constantly. And it can be like it feels like they're just living kind of like 2 lives all the time, and just having to figure out that balance of making sure they have enough people time and enough alone time.
Some of that might be coming from the 4 as well, right? The 4 is the one that sort of has to approach and then have some withdrawal time as well, if I understand that correctly.
Yeah, definitely.
One of my best friends is a 6-2, and his 2 line energy can come up like well, in Gene Keys, they call it the natural or the accuser. So depending on how, and I think we're mapping into this car, you're natural at providing care for others and just being empathic and loving and present and all that wonderfulness. But you can also become, accusing is such a strong word, but that codependence does carry that the attachment to, like I feel like the whole generation of moms that were over giving and just got real snippy and were like, you ungrateful kids. It's like, you don't be a mom because you're going to get paid back with their thank yous. If you can just show up and give the thing out of you know, we don't care for people because they pay us back. But there reaches a line where you've given so much that you get resentful, and you're like, damn it, if you can't even say thank you, you know, that's when that resentment starts to sneak in and show us that we're over the line. Our bodies said no, and our voices said yes, and now we're in dangerous territory.
Totally. Yeah, and the interesting thing is that if you have a 2 in your profile, it's always going to be combined with either a 4 or 5 or a 6. So you're never just, even though they call it the hermit, and it's an energy of really being with yourself and your natural talents, and it's like there's always this little sliver of the door that's open to other people, and they're the ones that kind of see you, and like they call you out into like sharing something that you have with the world. So it's really interesting because it'll change a little bit depending on whether you've got the 4, 5, or 6, but you're always going to be pulled out to exchange with other people.
Hi, everyone. I'm Eliana. I'm 2/4. Totally agree with everything that Rachel explained. I'm constantly in the leave me alone. I just need all the time to myself and to play with my toys. And then like, I love people. I want to be with people. Let's cuddle. Like all these, I'm constantly like, right now I'm in my hermit mode, full blast. And yeah, when I look at the card, the first thing that came to my mind was how much I love to care for myself and how much I look forward to caring for myself during my alone times. I've noticed that when I'm around people and I'm frustrated, it's most likely because I'm needing time alone to take care of myself and because I'm not giving that to myself. So the frustrating part is not being able to give myself the care that I know only I can give myself. So that comes to mind. And I noticed that when I do take that alone time and care for myself, that then I love to share that with others, that I really, really, really love taking care of my friends, my circle, my network. Like when I'm in that energy of connecting with my network, I'll like do random video calls and check in with friends and, are you drinking enough water? How's your body feeling? I'm like that person going around. But giving myself that care in my alone time is important. I think the shadow side, the codependency, the first thing that came to mind was, I think when I was growing up, I was more in that shadow. And I think that my frustration back then, when I was unaware of all this stuff and still learning about myself, my frustration then was depending on other people to care for me in a way that I still wasn't even caring for myself, and I still hadn't learned how to care for myself. So a lot of my frustration back then would come from like, why isn't this person, caring for me in this certain way? But I wasn't even like caring for myself. So it was almost like a codependent, I don't know, wrong expectation almost. I can't think of how it manifests right now, but in the now I see more as like the importance of giving myself care, and then that spilling out into my network.
Totally. I have a question for you as a 2/4. Another thing with this is it so often people with 2s don't realize the things that they're good at. And I'm curious, like, has that been your experience, or like, where has that showed up in your life?
All the time. I think growing up, even when I wasn't aware of my human design, I was a person always asking on Facebook, like, what are the top 3 strengths you see in me? Or, what are the gifts? Always seeking my network to reflect to me, how I am. I think now there are things that I can say, I'm really gifted at this. And then there are things that sometimes my friends, reflect back to me, and I go, really? Like, that's not a big deal. Like how is that valuable in your eyes? So I think I still, yeah, I definitely go through that. I think I'm blind to some things, but now I'm more intentional of asking my closer circle of like, remind me what you see in me. And that's helpful.
Totally.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. Coming up for the line 3s. Oh my Lord, do I got a lot to say about being a line 3? And we have several 3/5s as well.
Yeah, we got a lot of 3s.
Yeah. We've got Rachel is a 1/3, but a bunch of 3/5s. So I'm going to actually have to think about this one a little bit, the higher self versus the should. I think where it probably connects for me is that along with the mistake making, there can just be so much shame over getting it quote unquote wrong and frustration. You know, I'm a generator, so we get frustrated. Ain't nobody get frustrated like a generator get frustrated. And the shoulds, they bring the energy to be quite heavy, you know? This like, if I had done it like I should do it, I wouldn't have made this mistake. If I had worked harder, I should work harder. Everything would be better if I would work harder. Everything would be better if I like was smarter and hired the right people. Everything would be better if I saved more money. You know, there's just like an endless long, impossible and imaginary list of ways that my life would be better if I had done it like I should. And it's really exhausting. Man, you can just wake up hating yourself every day of your life. And I've spent a lot of days like that. So I can say from personal experience. Oh, yeah, and I forgot our 6 lines who lived a lot of their life as in their 3 phase. I'm super curious about that. So anyway, I could talk about this for a long time, but I want to make some space since we have several people with 3.
Yeah, or even the 6 who lived their 3 phase. Mary is saying she's still recovering from hers. And I can go too if nobody wants to share.
I have a 3 as well, and I really agree with what you said. There's a lot of should. I'm really in a place of letting myself make more mistakes and really seeing and just try things out. Really, I look at it as experimenting instead of experimenting that's going to come with some natural mistakes. And I'm really seeing how much better it is for me and for the people around me, and for my 5 line. I'm a 3/5 as well, and I'm seeing how much more my 5 line can do if I let the 3 be an equal to it instead of sort of a subpar partner. So it feels like both pieces get to be their higher self if I stay out of I shouldn't make mistakes, or I shouldn't try everything under the sun. I'm also a manifesting generator and Gemini, sun and moon, and a bunch of other things. I try everything all the time. And so there's a lot of room for should for me. But when I let that experimentation really do its thing, things feel much better. There's a lot less frustration. So I definitely resonate with this card.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, and then we have a message from Mary who said that so when you have a 6 line in your profile, you spend the first 30 years of your life kind of living at that 3. So if you think about all of the people in the world, a big percentage live at least part of their life as a 3 line. So there's just a lot of mistake making out there. It's really how we learn as a species. But Mary says that during her 3 phase, she had to try everything. And that really resonates for me, because I would try to like nail it the first time. I'd be like, I'm gonna nail this. Well, I mean, I'll never grow out of my 3 lines, so I'm still this way. But like you literally cannot. It's like you could try to be perfect about something. You could have 10 people proofread it. You could whatever. But if it's your first time doing it, there's gonna be a typo. You know, there's gonna be like something that's just not quite right, and you just like, you can beat yourself up about that until you just accept it and are like, the most important thing is just getting it out there, as opposed to making it perfect. And then, you know, the next time that it's going to be better, and the next time it's going to be better. And like the mistake I've made the most, I think, as a 3-line is trying to hold on to something too long and make it perfect, when really it has to go through iterations.
So Rachel, I have a question for you. I listened through to your manifestation consultation that you did for me, which, by the way, anybody who has not gotten one of these from Rachel, I highly recommend that you do, because I probably listened to mine 6 or 7 times, and I got it done, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 months ago. I listened to it again a couple of days ago, and I heard something in there I had never heard before. So just more and more layers will come through the more times you listen to it. But it was about, and it's not just because of my profile lines, but I expect that many of us have the experience of when we do something in the world, we don't always get immediate response back. It's like an experimentation process. So, I wish I had a better formed question, but do you get what I'm trying to poke at a little bit? Like, what accounts for this? Is it because we're generators? Is it like, what is it that means? I'm so curious about sort of the architecture of incarnation. It's not like this just to punish us, right?
Yeah. Yeah, like you don't always get the feedback to that iteration, or I don't know. Is that the question?
But when I do things in the world, it takes a minute. My friend described it as, okay, you've made this card deck, you just launched it 2 weeks ago, and it was like 10 days ago. And what I want is I want to throw the rock in the pond and immediately to create this big splash. But it's like, no, every single molecule of water in that pond is going to be shifted by the fact that the rock has fallen into the pond. But it takes a long time for the waves to hit the other shore and to bounce all the way back to you. Like, trust that you're going to move every molecule of water in the pond.
Yeah. I think some of that's a generator thing, slow beginnings. It might show up differently, for instance, for a manifester or even a projector. Sometimes I think for them, that feedback loop is a little bit faster. But yeah, I mean, it's like sometimes you do have to kind of like hold inside you that like faith that whatever it is going to kind of like come together, and it definitely doesn't come together right away. And sometimes you have to just like move on to the next thing before you fully resolve that thing. And I think there is an aspect to the 3-line with that, where you have to like really be willing to put something out there and maybe not know right away whether you should just like freak out about it, never do it again, or it's going to be wildly successful. Like, you just don't quite know sometimes for a while.
Yeah, and the 3-line has such a quick ability to cut things off because so many things don't work. So I think the point of discernment that I'm working on getting to is learning to do stuff and leave it in the world. There's like this traumatized part of me that's like, fine, I'll just cancel the whole project and we just won't do it. We'll burn everything. That's kind of my childish, petty, like, well, if you don't like my toys, I'll just take them all and go home. There's a real big part of that in me. I'm curious if other 3-lines feel that. Like, I'll just take your number out of my phone. I'll just block you. We'll just be done.
Yeah, and it's
the easiest
possible
place for me to go to.
it's possible that our other line is what kind of keeps that in check, because I think the 3 would always just burn everything down and just move on to the next thing. But then it's like your 5 is like, but I want to be helpful, or like my 1 is like, but I want to figure it all out. So it's like that kind of holds you back from just like burning all the bridges and torching everything. But that, yeah, I think kind of what you might be feeling is that 3, it wants to mutate everything. It wants to evolve everything. And so it just wants to like keep going. But sometimes it's like these other things kind of have to come together in order for that mutation to occur. And it's not always instantaneous.
So in the chat, Tina says, my problem as a generator is also holding on too long. I spent all my energy trying something and it's hard to let go. Yeah, she's a 1-3.
Yeah. I feel like as 1-3s sometimes, especially as generators, number one, we can tend to hold on to things too long. But sometimes it's like, I'll feel like I want to be done with something, but it's like not done with me because I haven't gotten to the very bottom of it yet. Or like, I think I'll have gotten to the bottom. Like, I just get obsessed with researching things. Like, I'll just watch like 10 hours of videos about North Korea and I'll be like, I don't want to do this anymore. But then there's something in me that's like, no, you need to watch more videos about North Korea. And I'm just like, oh my God. So yeah, sometimes it's like that other line that's kind of telling you like, nope, you haven't figured it all out yet.
But what have you figured out what the Japanese stationery thing is about yet?
No. Just like, yeah, it's just like weird obsessions. I don't know. It's just like, that's kind of the 1 line thing. And then the 3 sort of helps you like get that out there, whatever that thing is that you're obsessed with. And then you kind of go back into the 1 and like research some more. So yeah.
I just have to stop and say, this is exactly the conversation I was excited to have, is to get the people who have the opposite energy to be able to call out the strengths and the pitfalls of it, because I'm just desperate to know how to incorporate 5 line energy. So we're going to do 4. We're not going to skip ahead, even though I feel selfish in that way. So just hang on. All your 4s, get ready. Man, cards are freaking crazy. I have drawn this card 3 times today. In the last, whatever, like 4 hours, I have drawn this card out of a 64 card deck 3 times. It is crazy. How does this even work? Okay, and it is none other than the Compassion and Sadness card.
I can give a little intro to the 4 line energy too, if that's helpful for people. So 4 line energy in classic human design, they call it the Opportunist. So this is like, I always think of it as kind of the person who is connected to everybody and is like a networker, but networking can kind of have a weird connotation because you don't have to be extroverted exactly, but it's just that you are having people around you that you trust and that really care for you in the same way that you care for them is really important. And if you don't have that kind of like reciprocal exchange of energy as a 4 line, the relationship can feel really bad and you can often want to move on from that. And let's see, 4 line. Yeah, it's like for instance, my dad's a 1-4, and so he like obsessively researches things and then he like wants to tell everyone about it. And another thing about 4 lines is that there has to be kind of like a baseline of friendliness in relationships. So like, you're not going to do a lot of dealings with strangers as a 4. Opportunities will come through people that you know. another example of that would be my stepson's a 2-4, and he was going to get his first car, and like me being a 1-3, I would probably just go online and like search for what I wanted, and it would I'd find it that way. But for him, it was like his dad's friend just happened to be selling the car, like the exact car that he wanted, like with the exact engine, and he's really into cars. So that was how that car came into his life. So you see that a lot with the 4 line. It's like, it's always going to be like a dealing with someone who you have some thread of connection with. So yeah.
Yeah, I love this comment from Cheryl. She says, OMG, I was just contemplating that. As a 4-6 and an introvert, I was intimidated about the whole networking thing, but this makes so much sense. Thank you for that. This has an octave with the 1 line as well. Rachel, can you speak to that since you're a 1?
Just in terms of which part?
Well, if I understand correctly, the lines, like the 1 and the 4 have a resonance, the 2 and the 5 have a resonance, and the 3 and the 6 have a resonance.
Yeah. I don't know exactly, like, I'm still kind of figuring that part out as how that like fully manifests too. But a feeling that I have about this card in particular is that the 4s in my life, they can very easily be like hurt by the people that they're connected with if they feel that what they're offering isn't returned. And that's just going to be part of being a 4 line. I never understood this being a 1-3. Like both my parents have 4 lines, and my mom's always like, oh, well, they had us over for dinner, so we need to have them over for dinner. And like, we had them over for dinner, but they didn't have us over for dinner, so we're not going to call them. And I was always like, wow, isn't that kind of like, you're like keeping score? But now I understand that's fully correct for them, because that exchange needs to be equal. And I definitely see that they're like 4 lines are they're so giving with the people that they have in their network, and it's not something for the rest of us to take lightly, because they're really putting a lot of energy into that care and compassion. But then that can be difficult if it's not returned, and so that's kind of like a sadness that I will see in the 4 line people in my life.
100% agree as a 4. I love my 4 line. It makes me feel like a tree. Like trees are just standing there, but like on the root, they're just like interconnected with all these other trees. Like that's how they form their network. So I'm an introvert, even though a lot of people think I'm an extrovert. That's probably because when I'm turned on as a generator, I'm like, woo! But as a tree, as a 4, like interconnected with all my people, it's like Rachel said, like I love, and it goes back with the caring card, I love caring and giving to my network. The sadness for me comes in when I don't feel it's reciprocated, or when I feel like, yeah, the people in my network are not either giving, not that I give to receive, but I feel the sadness, or when I'm giving and caring, but they're somehow closed to receiving the compassion. So for me, the sadness shows up on either of those 2 occasions. But there's a lot of joy in just being able to be compassionate, 1 towards myself, and 2 towards the people that I'm connected to. I also feel really good in receiving that from my network as well. It's like Rachel said, like if I need something, I probably won't research it. I'll ask, you know, a few people in my network. I feel like I have a Rolodex of people in different categories in different parts of the world, and all I have to do is be like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And it feels good to almost have that, like that intimate, I don't know, again, it's like this inter-tree connection is what I feel.
Yeah.
Like hey, like, pass, because, trees, like when one of them is missing nourishment, they feed each other. Like they send nourishment to like whatever tree is missing, whatever they're missing. So often as a 4, that's how I feel with my network. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
It's so true. That is such a good analogy, because it's like all the roots are connected under the surface, and it's like the rest of us can't quite see that. And it is so interesting. It's like sometimes with my 4 lines, I'm like, wait, why didn't you just Google it? But I'm like, no, they're not going to find it that way. Like they don't want something from a stranger. You're going to get a better suggestion from the people around you. Actually, I gave a 4-line friend a suggestion today, and I was like, well, all I did was Google it, but that was like, she wanted it from me. So I was like, I know she's a 4, so of course that's what she wants. So I'm totally happy to just like filter it through my point of view and like tell her what I know about it. So yeah, it's really nice to hear people's like actual lived experience of this stuff. So thank you. Any other 4s have anything to add?
I was just gonna say, I've never gotten a job on my own. I've always had some like jobs and stuff, but I also see it as like, I'm really concerned about resources and resource management. Like I want to make sure that everybody has what they need, because if they have what they need, then I can do what I need to do. If somebody's missing something, I get really distracted by that person not having what they need. So then I go and try to get that person what they need and not necessarily take care of me, which is where I can see this card sort of coming into play, is like I have compassion to give that person, but I'm sad because I'm not giving it to myself sometimes, because I'm trying to manage the resources within my network. And I will say I'm a 4/6, so I'm currently on the roof in my 6th part of life, and it's in the middle of a pandemic. So being isolated and having my network shrink is really showing me like a really different side to being a 4. I just wanted to throw that in there, because like my network is shrinking, which is good because people are falling out of my life that I don't need anymore. But I'm also feeling very sad because like I need people. Like I need people to go forward with life. So it's an interesting time to be a 4/6.
I love that. I'm also curious if you, Marissa, if you have, there's a I contribute gate in the throat. I don't know if anybody has seen Evelyn Levinson has this amazing Gates in the Throat series. And one of the gates is you speak most authentically when you speak to what resources you have. You know what I'm talking about?
I know I have in my throat, I know people resonate when I speak from my own experience, but more than about someone else's, but I don't know about my speaking about the resources part of it. But
I will look it up on my phone and see if I can manage to paste it in the chat. But it's the Gates of the Throat is one of my favorite ways to read the chart. Maybe we'll have to do another event maybe to talk about the Gates of the Throat, because it's so freaking helpful. And we can talk about open throats, like, oh my gosh, so much we can talk about.
Well, see, is
there anybody else that
network, you gave me something to look into, so thanks.
Shall we move on to the 5?
Yeah.
We can come back to any of this at some point. This is one of my favorite cards in the deck, and I'm just thrilled to draw it in the 5 position, because it just feels like, oh, this is the answer to all my problems in life. Okay, I think we have at least 1 5 in the conscious. I think Paula, is there anybody else that has it as a conscious line that might be able to enlighten us? Because we got a bunch of 3 5s here.
Yep, mine's in the conscious too, because I'm a 5/1.
Awesome. Did you resonate with anything of what you've read about it so far?
Yeah. I thought it was really interesting what I've learned about it. I probably will not be able to find what I was looking at again. And this card, I resonated because of the path that I'm on right now. I was really amazed when I had the chart done, and I read different aspects of myself, about myself, that what was wonderful for me was it affirmed the path that I'm on is the right path for me to be on. That was a really amazing thing for me to realize. But this is really interesting because the way I've just had a recent struggle with this myself. And in order for me, as a projector 5, which is a little bit different, I think, than a generator 5, I'm not supposed to work a normal, according to what I read, I'm not supposed to have like a normal 9-to-5 job because it just doesn't fit my whole personality. And I've kind of had that for a really long time because I owned a business with my husband. And only recently did I decide to, that I wanted to close that business, which he was in complete agreement with. And what I had to struggle with here was manifesting that part of myself that is a 5-1, which was so important for me to do. I had to actually come face to face with my feelings about scarcity. So that was what was really interesting. I had to look at that in depth to be able to take this step to manifest this part of my life that is in real alignment with my just human design chart. Scarcity, the idea of scarcity, the idea of failure and being without was what was preventing me from being able to take this step.
Did you at any point feel like you didn't want to let people down? Was that any part of it?
Oh, absolutely. Yes,
Yeah.
Definitely. I felt a great responsibility of not wanting to let anyone down. That's a really great question. In fact, this rippled out with the actual business that we're closing. I had to call the accounts that I've been working with for 20 years and tell them that I was closing. And one of the accounts said to me, "Oh no, I was hoping you would retire at the same time I was." And I felt terrible. I really did. I felt terrible. Like I was I said, "Oh, I feel like I'm abandoning you." And that, so yeah. That's a great question.
Yeah, that's a really big part of that 5-line energies, because basically what happens is that you kind of have this special field around you that people sense that you can solve something for them. And they can kind of project their hopes and dreams and also their own issues onto you. But usually it's more of like a positive projection, like they're looking at you like, oh, like she has the solution for me. And and that's not, like, you probably do, but the challenge with the 5-line is only to try to provide that solution when it feels correct for you.
Oh,
and
that's a huge
yeah.
challenge. That's a huge challenge.
Because people are always going to be attracted to you in that way. And they'll also, but the kind of the hard side of that is that if you're always trying to jump in and provide that, it can kind of like land like just negatively on people. And I like definitely sometimes I think, I don't know if other five lines have experienced that. I'm not a 5, so I don't know what it feels like. But just like putting something out there, maybe thinking that you should do it, and then having people like feel that you're very intense or be very put off by your energy, because 5 lines can be very intense. I can almost always guess when someone's a 5 line because
Really?
there's just something about their energy. So I don't know. Anybody else have anything to say about that? And it's it's not a bad feeling, but there's something intense about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what other people have to say about that.
So according to Gene Keys, the 5 line is the line of voice and the line of the leader. And it's the culmination of the lines, because it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6 is like on a whole other level. Like 6 is off doing its own thing entirely. So the 5 is very incarnated in the voice, and the 6 is almost like a divinity, like a god that hasn't quite come into its body yet and can struggle with feeling fully human, like you even belong on this planet. And the 5 does have that intensity because, God damn it, we got something to say. So Rachel, I loved so much your profile wrap up that you sent out in the email. When I saw the 5 line permission to shout it from the rooftop, I was like, oh God, that's the best and worst news I can possibly imagine, because my opinion is unpopular. And it's gotten a lot of slap back because of the projections, because of the misunderstandings, because of I've literally had this relationship psychologist tell me that I was too intense. And I was like, own your feelings. You are overwhelmed. I'm not overwhelming, which I actually did say to him. You know, you're having a special moment when you're like correcting a psychologist on his communication skills. But that's how intense I am, that I can throw a psychologist off. There's a little exclamation point. It's December. It's the festival of the something, like all month long, and there's a ton of fireworks. So that's just what's going on.
Yeah, 5s have stuff to say, and it's usually stuff that people need to hear as long as they feel right about saying it. But it's kind of like when you're a 5, you have to, if you feel compelled to say it and it feels right to you, you kind of just have to put it out there with no expectations, because people may not react so well to it, but they will, like over time, it'll be fine. And yeah, people will just project things on you. And I've also heard a lot of 5s say that they always felt like nobody quite knew them or saw them. Like I had a friend that I've had for a long time, and I was pretty close with her, but like everybody else in our friend group would be like, wait, like I don't even know her. I feel like she never talks to me. And I was like, wait, but she does, you know. It's like, I don't know. It's like you have to almost put effort into getting to know that person, because it was like everybody had a completely different opinion about her, and none of them seemed to be quite right. It was kind of just like we were all projecting our own stuff onto that person. But then the positive to that is that it allows you to communicate to a lot of people at once. Like your message can reach many people because it's almost like they all receive it in their own way. Whereas the rest of us, we're just giving out our one message and it might land on like 10% of people. But the 5 line, it can kind of land on 100% of people. So that's like the good side to that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
It's a
That's
little
super fascinating.
It's a little
Go ahead.
challenging, I think, for me anyway. When I learned that as a projector, my 5 isn't supposed to necessarily come out until it's invited, and I found that that's so true in my life, that works really well. But that's even more challenging because most of the time I need to just keep my mouth shut.
Yeah, 5-1s, particularly for projectors, can be a challenging one. I think you have the ability to make a lot of impact, but it's like your timing is so important with that.
Yes, timing is everything. I agree with you. Yep.
Yeah, like you could kind of chill back like 99% of the time, and as long as you hit it that 1%, then like you're good. Whereas, you know, other people will be like making mistakes, trying to figure it out, making mistakes, but it's like you'll end up at the exact same place at the same time with just like your small amount of effort. So that's really interesting.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah, I have my bestie is a projector, and the trick has been for him that there's something he does with his energy that he's learned. He's starting to get the hang of it, but it's like when he comes into himself in this deeply centered way, he could be sitting on the other side of the room, and he's had this happen. Like his mom and his sister were off talking in the kitchen, and he was in the living room, and he just brought himself into center, and both of them stopped talking in the other room and said, "David, what are you doing?" It's like, that's how powerful it is. And I think that if you can find the people to help you identify, that can know what that projector aura is about, and really, really resting in, if I'm not being invited, it's not in any way a judgment on whether I'm going to get invited or whether I'm doing it right or whether I'm good enough. Like your self-esteem, when you can detach that from getting those invitations, that's when the manifestation starts to really come together.
Wow. That's great.
Yeah. Projectors is a super interesting aura. Yeah. Yeah, and I've seen him do that as well. We were sitting together, and we had a friend talking to us, and he did the thing, and I turned my whole body around. I was like, David, you just did it. That thing, you're like so captivating right now. And it wasn't because wasn't like the words he was saying. He just shifted something in his energy field, and it go, whoa. Yeah, it's super interesting. So, all right, just in the interest of time, I want to move us forward to the 6th line. Oh, we do love our 6th line. Being, like, isn't being the perfect card for the 6?
I think FOMO is also the perfect card for the 6.
Right?
I have lots of FOMO as a 4-6 because I want to experience the things with my network and my people and be with the people. And when I can't be with the people, I'm like, oh, I don't know what that is. Because, I mean, yeah, you can tell me. But it's really great to, like, experience a thing with someone, at least from my perspective. So I can succumb to the FOMO quite often, especially in the age of social media, you know, like everybody, you see all of the things. Well, you see the things that people show you. You don't see all of the things, but it can cause some FOMO. I think this. I look at this card and I think of this as like the balance to the force. So like, if I just be, I don't have to worry about the FOMO. Like the FOMO won't be as strong and it won't pull me. It's just like, you know, it'll bring me back to center as in terms of this card, you know. And I also think like as a 6, I can sometimes get caught up in the stages, right? Like, so like in the first stage is supposed to be my 3 stage. I hate to break it to people, but I was not like the trier of all of the things. I have a little bit of regret around not the trying of all of the things. I tried some things, but I wasn't like, there was definitely a lot of stuff I didn't try. So then I'm like, oh, did I miss out on this phase? Oh, what's going on? Oh, I'm already on the roof. like I was like, oh, here I am. And then, you know, I'm like really eager to get to that role model stage so that I can share what I've learned and my insights in a way that, not that I can't do it now, but I can sort of get caught up in those stages. And again, if I just be, like, I don't have to, like, everything's happening. the way it needs to happen if I just be. So it was a good reminder for me as a 6.
It's so true. And what's so interesting about 6s is when they just be, they think they're missing out, but actually everyone's watching them, which is what's so interesting. It's like they think they're just like, no one knows, I'm just here, whatever. But everyone's like, what are you doing? Whatever. Like they're just paying attention. So all you have to do is be, and like the party kind of like assembles around you in a way.
I had that exact sort of exchange with my boss today. I was like, I just feel like I'm like not doing anything. And she's like, oh, did you forget about those like clients that wrote in and said that you were so helpful and you did like this? And I was like, yeah, but I just don't like feel like I'm doing Thanks for sharing that. That put the perspective in it for me.
Yeah, probably because it's like in the first bit of your life, it was more of the like the doing, like the all over here and over here and over here, and like, and then you kind of get a little bit more refined where you don't have to do all of that anymore, and then you're like, wait, I'm not doing anything, but instead you're just like doing it correctly. Yeah.
I think that's what happens when we start to master our generator or profile strategy and sink into our purpose. Like the big shift for me, I'm doing the Venus sequence 6-month retreat on Gene Keys, which is awesome. And one of the things that Richard Brev said about the sphere of purpose is, which is like the earth, the conscious earth, I can't remember anyway, is that we think that the purpose of our life is a thing to do. And it's not. As a generator, you're just going to live into your purpose. You follow your strategy, you're gonna live into your purpose. You can't miss it. You can't miss the bus that's meant for you. It's just impossible. So I've been trying to sink into resting in this idea that I be my purpose. And when I'm rested into that purpose and not trying to do it, that it radiates from me, it emanates from me. That quality of being that is illuminated by that sphere of purpose is something that I could share with someone that I'm standing in line to buy stamps at the post office with. You know, it is those little moments where our energy ripples out. We didn't do anything. We were just ourselves. I find a lot of space opens up in me when I can calm my shit down enough to contact that reality a little more.
Totally. Cheryl's saying something too.
Okay. Thanks so much for inviting me. I'm so tired. I haven't been sleeping for days, so I've got to go to bed. But this was awesome, Cris and Rachel.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Really great. Thanks so much for inviting me. I love all of this. It was really interesting.
Yeah, thanks for sharing your experiences.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Bye.
Awesome.
Bye.
So I put the link in the chat to the deck. It has just been released in Kickstarter for pre-sale so that we can do a proper large batch printing and get all the pretty. So if you have any questions about the deck or about the Kickstarter or any problems with it, you can reach out to me. I think everybody probably if you don't have my email and you only have Rachel's email, email her. Is that okay? And they can connect. I'll put my email in the chat as well. It's crystal@crystalbeasley.com. And the website is becomingdragon.com. And there's all my contact information at the very bottom of that page. So I'm super easy to find. And I hope we'll do more of these. This is like super fun.
Yeah, it really was.
Does anybody have any like follow-up? Let's ties us in a bow, comments about any of the lines or anything that we talked about?
Just be.
Exactly.
Also, if you have ideas for what you would want to talk about in future sessions, anything that you have questions about, that would be super helpful. Because as a generator, I need to wait to respond. So throw me some good questions to respond to.
I have the gate of ideas, so I'll just idea some things for you. Like maybe one about like undefined centers, like if you pulled a card for every undefined center and like what that looked like, or defined center, if you wanted to continue doing this with human design, something like that. Because I was like, ooh, what would my undefined solar plexus have to say about this situation?
Yeah, that'd be really cool. I like that idea.
As I learned, not all ideas are for me to execute, so I'm happy to share. Happy to share the ideas.
I really like your gate. I feel like this is the best way to learn any system. At some point, I want to teach the Enneagram by bringing a group of people together, most of whom do know their types, and letting us speak on behalf of our type, because it's so much easier to absorb this when we're like, oh, I can feel your energy. When we get like a couple of Enneagram 7s in front of the room, it's like, oh yeah, I know you guys. I went to high school with one of you. And it starts to click, and I feel like,
yeah, you tend to
Go ahead,
remember
Rachel.
it better. I just always remember, like, I remember people's stories, and it's so different to hear someone like talking about an experience they had as opposed to just reading a very dry book, which many of the human design texts are.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you won't, I think it's way easier to not mistype yourself, because I've had people tell me that they're a 7 or something. I'm like, no, honey. No, you're a 3. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun though. The deck, by the way, if you look at the bottom of the card that's currently up, underneath being, you'll see 7 dots. And this is actually one of the cards for the Enneagram 7. So each one of the colored suits corresponds to the Enneagram. That's the structure of it. So I'm just a junkie for all these sort of personality. I'm flipping through the 6s right now. The 6 is the loyalist, and they struggle with hyper vigilance, where we started. And then the 5, that's the one that tends to hide in their solitude and want to amass lots of information and struggles with ever feeling like they haven't enough information. And the 4s are artists. The aesthete really has some deep wounds of belonging and feeling like everybody else got a copy of the handbook of how to be friends, and they're never going to get invited to the birthday party. The 4s, we love our 4s. So much generative creativity at the bottom of the well. The 3s struggle with self-deception and performing, struggle to feel like they're supported by the natural flow of the universe. My mantra this week has been life supports life, because it's just life takes care of life. It's just really hard to believe that as a 3. We're like, no, you have to achieve. If you don't achieve, nothing is going to happen except through the effort of your own hands. The 2 are most of the nurses in the hospital probably have some 2 in them. Struggle with, this is the Karen codependence card that we started with, and making sure that they are setting boundaries and monitoring resentment. So critical for the 2. I'm just giving you all a quick flip through so you have a taste of the deck. The 1, the reformer, really important permission to make mistakes, to not get it right, to do it ugly. And And I think the scariest card, the solid black one that says, you have all of the resources and skills and you don't need any other teachers, just look within yourself. And then lastly, the Joker of the deck, my self-portrait of myself as a Cyclops. I'm sure you can see the resemblance. So that is, I'll turn off the screen share so we can all see each other for our little wrap up. But thank you so much, everyone, for coming. And maybe we can all unmute and say our final parting words.
Yeah, thanks everyone. It was really nice to see so many people that I haven't actually gotten the chance to see face to face. So it was great.
It was really fun. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good evening wherever you are.
Bye.
Bye.